What if a doctor learned how to open a door in your mind, then someone asked him what else could fit through it? This was Louis Joylon West, psychiatrist, healer, engineer of memory, a man who studied trauma and mapped the hinges of belief. In the shadows of the Cold War, government dollars chased an idea. If you can soften memory, you can shape belief. If you can shape belief, you can steer a life. And if you can steer one life, how many more? This is not folklore. This is budgeted, logged, and sometimes shredded. A program with no address, and a doctor who learned where the cracks are. Brooklyn-born, raised in Depression-era Wisconsin, Louis West grows up where certainty is rationed. Medicine gives him a craft. War gives him a purpose. At Lackland Air Force Base, young airmen bring home tremors the body can't hide. Bad sleep, worse dreams. West listens carefully. He's gentle and precise. He starts seeing minds the way an engineer sees load-bearing joints. People don't break in the same places, but if you can predict the fracture, you can choose the glue. Then come the POWs. They confess to crimes they never committed, praise captors they never loved. Newspapers call it brainwashing. West calls it process, sleep deprivation, isolation, repetition, ritualized pressure. Not magic, mechanics. His papers draw attention, some of it unsigned. Then grants arrive with friendly names. Research into hypnosis and suggestibility, into drugs and perception, the kind you don't advertise on a campus tour. West approaches hypnosis like a craftsman. Induction, deepening, cue. Under trance, a subject can forget a number on command, accept an event that never happened, follow a signal they don't remember receiving. He files what he can publish, and he learns what he can't say out loud. Two columns begin to form. In one, compassion, the Lackland model for addiction, early insights that will become PTSD care. In the other, controlled rehearsals that test where help becomes handling. The Cold War starts where doubt starts, inside a person's head. If the enemy can bend minds, the United States wants better tools. A sequence of projects: Bluebird, Artichoke, and the Umbrella Program, MKUltra. The brief is simple and staggering. Map the levers: memory, will, belief, and do it where no one will look. Hospitals, prisons, universities. The key molecule arrives by accident: LSD 25, a solvent for the sense of self measured in micrograms. West doesn't treat it like a thrill. He treats it like a key. Hypnosis prepares the lock. LSD softens the tumbler. Suggestion turns. He later indicates, narrative accepted if affect congruent. Translation: if a planted idea feels true, the mind may defend it as memory. Field data follows, not in white rooms, but in safe houses. Welcome to Operation Midnight Climax. Recruited sex workers bring in targets, drinks are dosed, desire and disorientation braid together while a concealed room collects confessions, fears, and loyalties that were supposed to be private. West isn't behind every mirror, but the grammar is his. Environment first, timing second, suggest, don't command. When a man doubts himself, he'll borrow your certainty. Later, Jack Ruby steps from a crowd and erases Oswald on live TV. After, in a quiet room, West evaluates Ruby and finds a mind coming apart. Maybe it is. Maybe that's what happens when your inner story collapses and nothing coherent grows back. Either way, the fog lands where a spotlight might have. Then there's Tusco, a catastrophic LSD dose, collapse, death, officially a miscalculation, unofficially a confession of ambition, finding the edge by crossing it. If this was simple villainy, we'd stop. It isn't. The same man who writes about total environment control also fights for humane care, speaks against the death penalty, and moves psychiatry toward treating trauma instead of blaming it. Behind the press releases, a second curriculum runs after hours. Controlled sessions, dim light, measured voice, induction, cue. A subject laughs at a phantom childhood scene, relieved to remember what never happened. Another tries a task he'd never choose, and later insists. The afternoon was ordinary, not puppetry, probability. The goal isn't perfect control. It's making certainty optional when a narrative needs a home. Volunteers? Some. Patients? Many, where consent is complicated. Inmates? Enough to fill footnotes. Black and white wards become test beds. Prolonged waking, sensory drips, headphones repeating therapeutic phrases. Weeks of sleep therapy, shock rebranded as cure. Some improve, some shatter. Some never find their way back. MKUltra learns a harsher truth. The perfect Manchurian candidate is mostly a myth, but intermediate victories are useful. Then the molecule leaves the lab. 1965 to 1967. LSD escapes custody. What began with clearance levels floods campuses, concerts, communes. Whether by design or entropy, ego dissolution becomes a social experiment nobody signed for. West consults at the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic, documenting bad trips, psychotic breaks, and the eerie efficiency of guided sessions. Isolate, dose, repeat, rebuild. He warns publicly about charismatic leaders who weaponize altered states. Privately, he keeps asking about compartmentalization. How far can behavior be walled off from recall under combined pressure? Out west, a drifter keeps violating parole and somehow never goes back. In the desert, a commune forms around a careful talker with a guitar and a doctrine. Acid becomes ritual, identity becomes costume, and then the science begins to grow, and it intends to spread throughout society. LSD is not a leash, it's a storm. Hypnosis is not a remote, it's a canal. You don't program perfect robots, you engineer conditions. MKUltra's fieldwork reads like choreography. Dim the room, control the soundtrack, anchor suggestions to relief, never order, invite. When he leaves, let him believe it was his idea. The cultural effect is paradox. Psychedelics spark protest and splinter unity. Revolt turns inward. Movements that might have hardened into political force diffuse into 1,000 smaller awakenings. Beautiful, chaotic, easier to steer or discredit. West's public work is suddenly urgent. Early PTSD frameworks. Addiction as disease, not delinquency. Cult psychology analyzed so families can pull loved ones back. The healers column grows. The other column persists. Under combined induction and pharmacology, to what extent can the subject's actions be decoupled from subsequent recall? He underlines one word: extent. The lab's grammar is now common language. Isolation, repetition, chemistry, belonging. The question is no longer can you move one person. It's how many can you move by moving the environment. The door is open. And the next chapters ask, who walked through? (1964) Dallas. Jack Ruby has just shot Lee Harvey Oswald live on national television. The world calls it insanity. The government calls in a psychiatrist named Dr. Louis Joylon West. West meets Ruby in a white windowless room. 2 hours later, Ruby collapses. Disoriented. Trembling. He claims he's being controlled by invisible forces, voices, machines. West diagnoses him as psychotic, but his report reads less like medicine and more like engineering. He writes about controllable hallucinations, suggestibility under duress, and total environmental manipulation. Ruby's mental collapse becomes part of a bigger question. Had West witnessed a broken mind, or had he helped design one? Declassified memos confirm it. West had funding under Sub-Project 43, a CIA experiment blending hypnosis, LSD, and psychological conditioning. The goal wasn't to build perfect assassins. It was subtler, to fragment identity, blur memory, and control behavior through belief. Sirhan, Robert F. Kennedy. Patterns emerge. Amnesia, trance-like states, voices giving commands. Officially, coincidence. Unofficially, case studies. Maybe West's greatest discovery wasn't how to cure madness, but how to engineer it. The counterculture is blooming and unraveling. LSD is no longer secret. The streets are filled with runaways, profits, and experiments in freedom. To the CIA, it's chaos. To West, it's a field laboratory. West sets up a small psychiatric research unit through UCLA, fronting as a drug treatment center. But records show he was collecting data on LSD psychosis, group influence, and the psychological vulnerability of youth. His notes describe patients who reported identity dissolution, receptivity to commands, and spontaneous obedience to authority figures. One of those cases was a drifter, a parole violator repeatedly released under curious circumstances. His name, Charles Manson. By 1968, Manson is leading a small cult in the desert, dosing followers with LSD, reshaping their identities, testing loyalty, and commanding absolute obedience. Was he a prophet, a psychopath, or someone who'd learned the same methods West had studied for decades? Later, West would lecture on brainwashing and cults, describing precisely what Manson had done, to the letter. He warned the public about charismatic manipulators who exploit altered states. The irony? He was describing his own blueprints. By the 1970s, MKUltra is exposed, but never punished. The paper trail burns faster than the truth can surface. Senators read aloud fragments of horror. Drugs slipped into soldiers' coffee, hypnosis on civilians, safe houses wired for voyeurism. But Louis West's name never appears in the main files, only in footnotes. He goes public as a humanitarian, fights racism, opposes the death penalty, pioneers PTSD therapy. He becomes a symbol of ethical psychiatry, while quietly holding the map of how minds can be unmade. West says the danger of manipulation has only evolved. His private letters warn that the tools of influence, repetition, imagery, emotional contagion, will someday move from the lab to mass media. Someday, the environment itself would think for you. That day came sooner than anyone realized. Today, the laboratory looks different. No syringes, no hypnotic lights, just notifications, with algorithms and feeds. The vocabulary changed, but the grammar didn't. Isolation, repetition, reward. The psychology West helped define became the architecture of digital persuasion. In his final years, Louis Joylon West tried to steer psychiatry toward healing again. Addiction treatment, PTSD therapy, community outreach. But the margins of his papers still carried familiar phrases: control environment, behavioral influence, suggestion as architecture. Maybe he didn't invent control. Maybe he just saw where it was headed. Louis Joylon West died in 1999, but his research never did. It just changed names. We call it data science now. But he'd recognize it instantly and give you a light nod and a smirk, knowing that his work has continued. Thanks for watching and going on this lucid trip with me about Dr. Jolly West. Support the channel and click the like and subscribe button so I can continue making more of these videos to satisfy your dopamine hits. So, until the next one, take care and stay curious.